Hello, everyone. We're coming at you live today from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania office here in the United States. So I guess I could say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are and when you happen to be listening to our webinar today on Cloud Agnostic Selling. So I'm Cordom, and I am the head of global sales here at Cloudreach, and I've got the pleasure really of sitting with some of our sales leaders in the business today. And this is really going to be an informal conversation about Cloudreach, what we see in the marketplace from a public cloud perspective, how we go to market, and really the big difference that our sales teams can make when we're working with enterprise customers in partnership with the public cloud providers that are in the market today. This is a great market. It is a growing and surging market. And the conversations we're having really are, they provide the ability to change the way an enterprise goes about their business, how they approach the market. So there's a broad discussion that we have with all of our enterprise customers. And it really is exciting because if you take a look at sort of the adoption of the public cloud space, it is growing by leaps and bounds, and we're really at the front end of those conversations day in and day out. So it's a great place to be, in a wonderful time to have those dialogues. So with me here today in the office, we've got Joe Walsh, who runs our Southeast business out of our Atlanta office for Cloudreach. Candice Collins, who is in our New York City office, which is also our U.S. headquarters, and running the Northeast piece of the business. And one of our top sales account managers, Hunter Burnette, who is in the North Carolina office in Raleigh, I believe, correct? Got to make sure I get the geographies right there. So from that perspective, again, this is going to be very conversational. We are really thrilled that you could join us today. There'll be time at the end to have a question and answer session if there's some topics maybe that we haven't covered or some areas that you'd like us to delve into a little bit more deeply. But I think what you'll find today as we get into the dialogue is the passion that we all collectively have for this market and really the great things and the impact that we can have as we go out and partner with the public cloud providers along with our enterprise customers. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, Candice, I'll just go through a quick focus on the agenda today. So this is really more about how we go to market and the sales effort that it takes when you're with Cloudreach. But we want to give you just a broad perspective of Cloudreach, who we are, sort of how we came to be, how we work in that public cloud space. So you'll see a couple topics that we'll review here. We'll talk about the cloud service providers that we engage with, and they're all wonderful partners. And we'll talk about sort of how we engage with them, the types of conversations we have with them, and the types of opportunities that we work on together. I think, Hunter, you're going to spend some time really talking about a day in the life of an account manager here at Cloudreach. What we do, the types of conversations you have, and what that looks like. Because I think as folks sort of understand a little bit more about sort of the daily cadence, it'll give them a good perspective on how we go to market from that perspective. And then the key attributes. So, you know, at the end of the day, from a seller's perspective, it's all about, in my perspective, how you show up, the positive attitude that you bring, the knowledge you bring into the market, the listening to the customer, and your ability to network and collaborate. You know, these sales are very collaborative. We partner with a CSP, we partner with different groups within an enterprise organization. So there is a lot of discussion that needs to take place across sort of many stakeholders. So it's important to understand what that looks like and how we go about that. And then lastly, we'll have, as I mentioned, a Q&A. So get your questions ready out there, and we'll be able to hopefully answer them. If not, we'll certainly follow up as well. But as I said, it's an exciting time to be in this space. And just to give you a little bit of a perspective on who we are at Cloudreach, we can go, I think, Candice, to the next slide. This is really a tagline that we kind of live and breathe every day. We elevate technology and people so you can reach new heights. And I can take that sort of in a couple different pillars, which I think it's important to look at. So from a seller's perspective, right, we are out there every day working with enterprise customers, trying to work with them on moving their businesses to the next level. And it could be an existing enterprise customer that has had a lot of legacy infrastructure that is looking to make that leap to the cloud. They may be dabbling in it today, but they're looking to make sort of a broader movement into the cloud. But it also could be a startup, or it could be a cloud native, digital native company that is starting off, that doesn't have any legacy infrastructure and is going to go right into the cloud from day one. So you have to sort of have the different types of conversations, but in both those scenarios, we're able to come in and elevate and have a higher level conversation that is business impacting for them. And I think one of the things from a seller's perspective that's also really important is, as you grow as a seller, you're exposed to many different types of technologies here, and we've got an entire development and sort of learning organization that allows you to come in and grow in the public cloud space. You may be talking about IoT one day, you may be talking about productivity improvements the next day, you may be talking about HR applications the third day. So there's lots of dialogue that occurs, and our focus is bringing enterprise-grade and enterprise-class sellers sort of into that environment, and then providing them with the wherewithal, the training, the development to just grow and be able to have multiple conversations with C-level executives, and again, take their organizations to new heights. That's kind of one pillar I mentioned on the sales side. We also have all of our wonderful technical resources, our engineers, our cloud architects, our cloud consultants, our data scientists, our project and program managers. They're out there day in and day out on the customer site, really working with the customers, moving those environments into the cloud, taking a look at either legacy applications and modernizing them, looking at brand new leaps into the cloud for applications or programs that they're looking to start. And so this entire ecosystem of what I call really, really smart people in this space are able to have those deep conversations, and not only out with the customer, but we also provide half a day a week of training for all of our engineers so they can stay on top of the latest and greatest technology across the spectrum of cloud providers that we have here. So it's really important that when you bring folks into the organization, it's not about just kind of putting you in front of a customer, but it's about giving you the tools and the confidence to have that dialogue in front of the customer day in and day out. So that's really where we're focused. It's bringing in great talent, and it's continuing to develop them as they get here, whether it's on the sales side or the technical side. And if we go to the next slide here, we are a global company, as I mentioned, so depending on where you are kind of today, you may be starting your day or ending your day, or joining us over lunch, which is great. You'll see collectively where we've got our offices, and we align those offices really, we focus in two areas. Where our customers are, obviously, is very important to us, but also where the public cloud providers have their offices as well, because I think, Hunter, as you'll talk in a little bit, you spend a lot of time out in their offices day in and day out. And that's really, when I talk about a collaborative approach, that really is what makes our sales folks very, very successful. So you can see where we are geographically. As I mentioned at the kickoff here, we're in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania office today, and this is where we have a lot of our folks that use Cloudemize, which is one of our diagnostic and migration tools that we may talk a little bit about as well. But we've got the core group of that team here today. And in the next slide, go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
Just a quick point, going back to the prior slide, Candice. As Chris mentioned, being a global firm with a footprint in the various continents throughout the globe, I think it's also really important and valuable to understand from my Cloudreach perspective that there are many global clients in our portfolio that have locations across the globe. So we afford them the opportunity to have a global account team that has representation across the globe. So although they have their locations in Philadelphia or Sydney or London or Paris, we're able to put together a collective team that's going to support them for all locations across the globe. And so we're just not US based or EMEA based, or you pick the continent, but we are a global presence, and our customers really see value in us coming to market as a single account team.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joe. I think as we get involved with larger, more complex customers, they're very focused on making sure that we're showing up where they want us and need us to be. So that global approach is really, really important. And I think, if you go to the next slide, you will see here, and I'm going to ask maybe Candice and Joe to chime in here on really what makes us different. I'm going to start on the far left of the slide, and then we can maybe have a conversation. But cloud native, and we talk a lot about being born in the cloud. So, that is our heritage. We were founded about 10 years ago by two, what I would call visionaries in this space that saw a need to help enterprises make the move to the public cloud. But in many cases, the enterprises, either it was in its infancy, didn't have the skill set internally to do that. And we sort of evolved out of that cloud native, born in the cloud mentality. So we wake up every day, and that's all we're focused on, is the public cloud space and getting really smart people in front of the customer to make sure that we can sort of elevate them. So Candice, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on a couple of the other
what stands out to me in a lot of the conversations that my team is having is around the application. We're not just talking to IT and talking about lift and shift, but we're talking to, the business owners, different lines of business, the DevOps team. So if historically you just only talk to IT, this is the opportunity where you're really having the true business conversations because you're talking about applications. And so I think it's a really great opportunity that a lot of our sellers have, is that they're getting experience with different business units within the organizations that they're working with. And that in itself has helped them grow from a professional standpoint and in understanding businesses more in the way they operate. And the other one is scale and reach, and that's what we were just speaking to from the global front. That comes in a lot when you're talking to a lot of customers today. Most customers do have a footprint somewhere else outside of the US. And the fact that we can say, hey, we have presence there, we have individuals, it gives them a peace of mind knowing that, we're not limited as to how we can support them. So those are two things that my team always shares with me, and then the clients that I have met that really stand out.
Yeah, Hunter, any thoughts?
I'd love to add that world-class managed services from a global perspective. It's a real differentiator for us when we're talking to our enterprise customers. The follow the sun model, we have a NOC in Edinburgh and Vancouver. So it's really, really important when we're coming in there, not only moving applications, focusing on helping them modernize, but being able to support them globally with a 24/7 NOC. So it's a real differentiator for us as Cloudreach, and I've seen our customers agree with how that elevates us and helps to support them and develop their enterprise and grow.
Yeah, that's great. I think what's interesting, if you take a look at the journey of a customer, and from a seller's perspective, I think, and Hunter, you hit upon this, which I think is really important. You're having many different conversations with the customer. So what's beautiful about this migration or the journey to the cloud is, as a seller here at Cloudreach, you can really start in the very beginning with the analysis. So take an enterprise customer that may have dipped their toe in the cloud or maybe trying to figure out how to do that. We can have the conversations at the very front end about what that journey would look like, how you might design it, what the timelines might look like, how you might be able to lift, modernize the application and move it over. So you can have all that sort of consultative and professional services dialogue up front. Then we can actually go to the next stage and help with that migration. So as I talked about, a lot of the really smart people, we can bring really smart engineers in and help facilitate the move from legacy on-prem solutions into the public cloud. We can help with that. Then, and by the way, we talk about software enabled. I mentioned Cloudomize. We can do a lot of assessment work up front to take a look at exactly how we would do that, the length of time it would take to do that, and what it would look like based on all the endpoints that you've got out there. Then once you've moved and ideally modernized the apps for a cloud-centric approach, we can actually manage that entire environment as well. So as a seller, you can really come in and impact the business in a couple different areas and have really what I would call a journey conversation from beginning all the way to the management, which I think is really important. I don't know, Joe, from your perspective as you're out talking to customers. I think that really resonates.
It's exactly really what all of our customers and our prospects are looking for, and they see value in the account team and from a Cloudreach perspective, is that we are able to welcome them to their journey from a strategic perspective on day one, assessing their environment, what is possible, and then walk them through a possible journey of what it looks like. And our customers really resonate with that, and Hunter can talk about the day in the life when we get to that in a moment. But I also want to make a point, and when we talk about what makes us different, I think on the flip side of it too, I think that it's also important to understand that we don't try to be all things to all customers in the marketplace, both locally and globally. And what I mean by that is that we have a wonderful and a robust and a compelling portfolio, and we try to stay within that portfolio from a strategic perspective, from an enablement perspective, from a migration perspective. As Chris talked about, modernization, advanced applications, et cetera, be able to do that, all within the framework of really a defined market size. And what I mean by that is our market size, we try to stay in our swim lane, for lack of a better analogy, in targeting clients with revenues between 300 million and say $3 billion on the high end. So we stay in that space, and our cloud provider partners really appreciate the fact that they can trust us, rely on us in that specific space, in the talent that we have from a technology perspective, engineering perspective, architecture perspective, that all know the different products and portfolios and platforms that we support. They all recognize that within that market size, that's our sweet spot. That's where the market is really growing and evolving, and those customers are adopting quicker than other markets as well. So it's as Chris mentioned, it's a wonderful time. It's an exciting time. It's a fast-moving time in this market.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Joe. I think we're very specific when we're out talking to our cloud service provider partners in what we would like to do and where we're probably best focused. Doesn't mean we won't go below or above sort of that target market, because we certainly have customers that are much smaller. It may just be startups, and we certainly have very large global 100 organizations as well that we're working with. But I think day in and day out, that's really where our sweet spot is. And I think it's important to notice your comment too about we're not all things to all people. We were born in the cloud. We're very focused in the space we're in. We do it really, really well. But we'll also really tell our partners and our customers where we may not be focused from a strength perspective, and that there may be some other folks that we would bring in to help sort of supplement the offers that we have as well. So, we know what we do very well. We're very proud of what we do, but it's not all things to all people. And I think as I took you along that journey, there are a lot of things that we can have an impact on. And as a seller, you can go out and you may have the entire conversation with an enterprise customer, or you may be interjected into some avenues within that enterprise customer, which I think is important. So you've got sort of a broad portfolio, right, of solutions that you can sort of focus around. I think the next slide we've got is really, we've spent a lot of time talking about this, and I'll just maybe ask the team here to comment on a couple. But the one that is probably what I would say important for us, not that they all aren't, but the certifications. So when we bring folks in, not only sellers, but also our engineers as well, we look to get them developed and certified. So as a seller, you can get certified on the various cloud platforms, right, that we would be talking about, and certainly from an engineering and programming and architect perspective, right, you can get certified on those platforms as well. So we're always constantly pushing our teams to develop and learn, and that's really important. As I mentioned, there are a lot of smart people here, and they basically show up all day, every day with a level of certifications that really show well with our customers. So I don't know if anyone, Candice, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on.
I would just like to add to that. Like, we were meeting with a client in Delaware, and we were telling the CTO about our the investment we make into our engineers and how we wanted to have half a day every week and getting certified, and he was just amazed by that. The it actually really resonated with him, where he's like, that's a great practice I want to take across my own team. So, you know, that investment in our people is really important, and it does resonate with our clients. The other thing that really stands out is we're a top tier partner among the 3 players, which I know is why we're here today to talk about that. You know, we have a great brand with AWS, Microsoft, and Google, and they know who we are within the market across the globe. And that's just really exciting. When we reach out to them, they want to talk to us. They want to hear what we're doing, where we're having success, and what we're seeing. And due to that, we have a great relationship with them.
And to take it one step further, to Candice's point around the partners, I think that also dovetails back to the certifications, because across the board with, for example, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, they really look to Cloudreach as a trusted partner in this space. And a lot of it is because of certifications, but it also goes a step further. For example, around our talent, our ability and our proven ability to execute in the market across various projects that Chris mentioned earlier, whether it be migration or data analytics or AI. We have proven to them between our talent, our expertise, engineering, architects, and sales that we can go to market depending upon the customer's preference in terms of what platform that will look like. And they know that Cloudreach, based upon our experience and our resume, we're able to execute well in the market. And we are a top provider and partner for each of those cloud providers.
Yeah, I couldn't say enough about that, Joe, being in front of our customers on a day-to-day basis and our CSPs, the importance of them validating us in terms of our certifications, our premier status. When they talk to their customers and our customers, and knowing that we have that backing and the right resources to provide to them, it goes a long way. And then also on our managed services, when we have Gartner backing us and supporting us, saying, yes, Cloudreach's managed services is strong, it's global, and it will continue to accelerate your journey to the cloud and support you long term. So I couldn't say enough about our premier status and the certification program.
Yeah, no, that's, well said, Hunter. I think it's really important as we sort of evolve the business here and continue to grow, that's sort of the culture that we build from the ground up. It's learning, it's the development, it's getting our folks in here and getting them into the culture. So when we show up at a customer, right, we're really an extension of our cloud service provider partners, as well as an extension in many respects of that enterprise company that's out there. And I think on the next slide, Candice, from a perspective here, so some things that are happening in the marketplace, and we'll have this maybe a roundtable conversation. I do want to mention, though, and Hunter, you brought this up. We had it, and we've got, I think, another slide coming up here about, who are these cloud service providers? We mentioned AWS, we mentioned Google GCP, and Microsoft Azure. So those are the 3 public cloud providers that we go to market with kind of all day, every day. And within that ecosystem, we have folks that are aligned and specialized within each of those skill sets. So from our perspective, we're out talking to customers about each of those public cloud providers. And I think from a sales perspective, and just from an overall development perspective, if you take a look at sort of the growth of a seller, you have the conversations I talked about, the journey through the cloud, right, with an enterprise customer, which you also then can layer on top of that. You're talking different technologies, right, potentially with different customers. So in terms of just growth and development and understanding of this cloud space, those 3 public cloud providers make up 75+% of the market today. There's some other really good ones as well, but when we sort of made a determination as to who we wanted to partner with, those were the 3 that we selected. And so I know, Hunter, you'll get into this kind of a day in the life, but you probably spend as much time out with kind of end user enterprise customers as you do with those 3 cloud providers day in, day out.
Yes,
right?
definitely, and that's something that I'll bring up later, but our CSPs are just as much our customers as our enterprise accounts. So it's both. It's being with them and our customers all the time.
And I think it's gaining their trust and confidence that when we're out kind of sitting side by side with our cloud service partners, that they have confidence in us. They know that we understand sort of their technology ecosystem, and we understand really at the end of the day what the customer is looking for and how all this fits together. So that's really, really important. And let's just open it up here for a dialogue on sort of what we're seeing.
Yeah, Joe, that's a great point, Chris, and I would just add maybe a different angle to it, if I may, and that is around from a seller's perspective and from an accounting's perspective, just being aware of what is going on in the marketplace in terms of the shift to the public cloud. And I think years ago, not too long ago, it was really an OpEx, CapEx conversation. And I think today that has changed. It has changed more towards a business outcome type of a conversation, an agility conversation, a speed to market conversation, being more competitive in this market today, where so many customers are more agile, especially in the cloud native environment. And so they need to be able to move quickly, faster. And how do you do that? So from an accounting perspective, a seller perspective, and from a Cloudreach perspective, we're out there talking to our customers about just those things: digital transformation, business outcomes. How do we do it faster, quicker on your behalf? Because at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for us to do. And so therefore, from an accounting perspective, and when we're out there talking to our customers, when we, to Chris's point earlier, when we're talking to the customer about what are your goals and objectives, it starts there, and then we kind of back into it from, okay, we understand your goals, objectives, business outcomes, strategy, direction, vision. What does that mean to you in terms of a public cloud journey? And so we have to really go back then and say, okay, let's put the puzzle together. And it starts with an assessment on Cloudemize, our assessment tool. It talks about step one might be the strategy. Step two might be whatever it is, or modernization, or data analytics. So it's really about understanding the customer's needs from a seller perspective, and then putting together the right solution that meets that. And I think our team today does a wonderful job of doing that globally. And the folks that are talking to us now and we're recruiting and that want to come join our team, those are the attributes that we see and that we're looking for. And that's only making Cloudreach that much better in the market today. And we're really excited about it.
Yep. I don't know, Candice, any thoughts just about sort of the conversations that we have day in and day out with the customer?
So, excuse me. Excuse me. So a lot of the accounts our clients we're talking to, I mean, I'll speak to maybe just a few where they're at this inflection point at an organization level where they need to modernize. And that can mean so many different things, but just to give you a little bit more detail, okay, what does that mean for who you're working with today? There's one client I'm working with where they're having a hard time attracting top talent. And the reason they're not able to attract top talent is because they don't have where you can work from anywhere. You can't work from any device, and they realize that's really having an effect on their business. And so what we're helping them do is to be able to create that, work from anywhere at any time on any device. And it's pretty cool to know that what we're doing is driving true transformation within that company. That's not only just helping IT, but we're helping recruiting for them. We're helping them bring in some of the best designers. So that way they're going to stay competitive, and they've been around now for 30 plus 40 years. And so it's just going to make sure they're staying relevant within the market. Another client that we're helping is, their fear is the startup that's coming from California. And their CTO told us, I don't know who my competition is going to be tomorrow, and it could be just someone who pops up out of nowhere. And so I have to make sure we're staying ahead. And those are, again, the conversations you're having. So I just think that's really exciting, because you're not just helping one individual or a team that you're working with, but you truly can put, your mark on an organization's transformation and what they're trying to achieve. And, who knows, maybe the project that you worked on helped them take themselves to that next level. So that's just some exciting stuff that we're seeing, and, the dialogue that we're having with our clients.
And I would take it also, just one additional point that Candice's great comment there, in terms of customers wanting to go to market quicker, faster, with agility, to be more competitive. I also think that mirrors well in terms of what customers are looking for a partner. And therefore, that's creating great opportunity for Cloudreach, because we, are not, a global GSI type of a firm, and I don't consider us to be a boutique as well. But going back to my earlier point regarding our swim lane and our market and who we go after, customers perceive us as being quick, nimble, fast, agile, responsive. Those Those are the attributes that they're looking for a provider in this fast-moving public cloud adoption space. And I think that's why we're winning and winning well today. It's a great spot to be and a great place to be at this time with Cloudreach.
Yeah, and I would say those attributes you just mentioned from our perspective, that's really, at the end of the day, what we're looking at in our top tier sellers, right? It's the ability to kind of get in, be unbelievably responsive, be customer centric, and really be focused sort of in, out, and across that enterprise organization, and then be able to take those conversations back internally, have a broader dialogue with, as I call them, the really, really smart people that are here, and stay focused on kind of that type of dialogue when all is said and done. So I guess, Candice, if you'd like to go to the next slide here. So the types of conversation, I don't know, Hunter or Candice, if there are any thoughts you'd like to
Yeah, we
chime
can
into
talk a
here?
little bit about like the journey that we're helping customers on and how we can help them if they're in the very beginning phases of, hey, I want to go to the cloud, or if it's, you know, modernizing their application, or if it's innovating. So I know we've spoken to this, but this is the different stages and the roadmap that we will build out for clients that will help them in their overall cloud journey.
Yeah, and I think one key item to point out, kind of piggyback on what has already been said, is areas of depth. So we have a lot of resources internally, especially on the pre-sales side, and you have so many technologies and so many, you know, ways that you can skin the cat and help companies to transform. As a seller, being able to dig into those key pre-sales solutions architects and cloud consultants that have specific areas of depth. They come from customer environments where they've worked, lived, and breathed in those you know, specific verticals, right? So we can take, you know, key resources from that perspective and put them in front of our customers and make sure that there is that cohesion and collaboration and consistency to the messaging that we're driving from a pre-sales perspective into the customer landscape and driving that customer towards that flexibility and agility long term. So when I think about this whole roadmap, I think about the art of possible and what it takes to help the customer to define those business cases and to tie them back into what are the technologies, what are the solutions that help you execute as a business. So these are the kind of the conversations that we love to have on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that our firm and our customers and our partners align on what is the long-term, you know, business case and justification. I'm seeing a lot in the market around data and analytics. You know, how do we start? How do we build a data strategy? We've migrated, you know, we're starting to modernize apps, but we need to understand how to better use our data, build algorithms, and really get the most out of what we have.
Right.
So in that area of innovation, I'm seeing a ton of need, a ton of push towards how do we grow more in the data science? You know, do we use ours? Do we utilize yours as a partner? And how can we collaboratively help our customers grow and innovate?
You know, that's great. I mean, Hunter, you kind of put out a great phrase there, the art of the possible, right? And I think a lot of our dialogue with customers is what is possible? This is where we are today. This is where we'd like to be. And how do we achieve that, right? So they're very focused on that. And, you know, you can talk about going to the cloud. Once you're on the cloud, having your app sort of cloud ready. So from a modernization perspective, and then just the pure innovation. And one of the things we didn't really mention up front, but we've been talking a lot about sort of the sales motion within Cloudreach. That really is a partnership. So we've got someone that's been super successful like Hunter, and really attached at your hip in that pre-sales discussion is what we would have as a pre-sales engineer, right? Or a solution architect, as we might call them. And they're in there kind of day in and day out with you, doing a lot of the discovery, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's a huge part of our job, is making sure that we have that alignment, that consistency. So when we're walking into a client, they're seeing us as one of the same. Right. And then there's that consistent alignment to the CSP. So it's as if the customer is experiencing us as one, but they're getting the best of all the folks that we're bringing to the table.
No, that's great. And as we take a look at sort of the resources that would work on the various solutions that we're talking about with customers, Hunter, you again mentioned it. There are a lot of folks within Cloudreach that were with enterprise customers. So they've got sort of that DNA, they understand sort of how that ecosystem works. We have folks that were CIOs, CTOs, from a cloud architect perspective, cloud strategists, that sort of supplement that sales conversation and can have really that level of discussion because he or she sat in that seat and did that job. So there's a wealth of talent to draw from within here to kind of bring out on that customer site. And the one thing I'll mention here, if you take a look at this chart, it's the innovation at the end. So, you know, when we talk to a lot of customers that are in a very competitive industry, and Candice, you mentioned that customer that may have been around 30 or 40 years, and they're worried about a startup out of maybe someone's garage, right, that's going to come into that marketplace. What they're always focused on is how can we develop things and get our impact in the market faster. So the public cloud is a great way to roll out new marketing campaigns, new advertising campaigns, and to get it done faster. So you've got some of these legacy companies that are really learning on the fly in many respects, and we're helping them sort of evolve that dialogue so they can get out quicker and faster with their messaging, because most of the folks we deal with are in a very competitive environment. And the other thing we really didn't mention is we talked about kind of that cloud journey. We talked about the CSPs that we work with. We talked about sort of how we go out to a customer, but sort of overarching across that is different vertical industry conversations, right? So we may have a conversation one day with a financial institution, the next day with a retail institution, the next day with a manufacturing institution. So when we talk about developing as a seller, right, you get a broad conversation and a breadth of knowledge across various industries as well, which is really important, I think, because you are able to have sort of different layers and levels of conversations across the board. I think, Candice, on the next slide, we talked about these. We love our partners. We work with them every day. And, they each bring a little bit different in terms of maybe the industry they focus on, maybe the technology they bring to market. But top to bottom, they're all providing what I would consider just top-level technology for these enterprise customers and helping them go kind of faster into newer markets and just kind of, we talk about elevating, again, sort of elevating everyone's game, right, at the end of the day. So I don't know if anyone has any additional thoughts.
Yeah, just like as a seller here, what does this mean to me? And, the way you would, when you begin your career here at Cloudreach, like the individuals at these organizations, at the CSP, will be a huge part of your success. Anyone who joins the team, and I think Joe has the same dialogue, we tell, our new hires, like the first 30, 45 days, you want to be living at the office, with AWS, at Google, with Microsoft. They are, most people I would say it's about 50% of the leads that you get can come from, AWS, Google, or Azure. It just depends. And having that strong alignment to a seller with one of the CSPs, and you're identifying accounts together, you're talking to them, you're networking with them, that's a key to being successful here. And then you have the support too. So when you join, it's not, okay, I just got to go meet with AWS. We have an AWS business unit, we have a Google, and we have Microsoft. And there's different leaders within those teams who will tell you, hey, here's the messaging to take to AWS. This is what they care about. You have a business development manager who will help you with aligning, will help you with meeting the right people. So you're not having to go at it alone. And something I always tell my team is you should never sell alone here. There's so many different individuals who will help you and assist you either with the customer or with our partners, so you always will have success. And I think that's what really makes working here really unique, is there's this army around you to make sure that you're going to have the right conversations, you're focusing on the right accounts, you're talking to the right people, so you have success here.
And I think just to echo Candice's point, I think one of the things that we want to be sure that we get the message out to potential candidates from a growth and career opportunity, which is wonderful here at Cloudreach. I think what makes us unique from our value proposition is that, to Candice's point, as you work across the various verticals, depending upon where your portfolio takes you and what your customer base ends up being, able to represent and learn the nuances of all three of these providers. So it's not like you just are able to focus on one or two. You're going to have the ability to really become a subject matter expert, learn, partner across all three platforms. And from, I think personally, being here a relatively short period of time, I think it's a great value add for folks to join Cloudreach, because you're all going to get exposed to these global brand names and their technologies. You really understand what makes them unique, and therefore it's going to make you unique as a new person joining Cloudreach. And I know Hunter has some experiences there. He's well diverse in his portfolio, being here multiple years, being a strong seller, and he's sold across all three of them. So Hunter, I'd love to get your perspective on being able to represent all three.
Yeah, I really think, going back to the CSPs, I think it's so crucial to understand how much they want us to have skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And from a seller's day to day, how crucial it is to understand that our CSP's accounts change from year to year. So how key is it to lock arms with them and focus on how do we go out there and drive business together?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not, a one-way street, that we're looking to help them to enable future opportunities in these accounts together, and that we're going after different individuals in these companies to help drive to the same message, which is true transformation and innovation. So in terms of my role, in terms of my work here at Cloudreach, day in the life, it's a very busy day, right? I always wake up early. I'm a triathlete, so I'm spending a lot of time either on a bike, in the pool, or running. I also have 5 children to add to that, so very busy.
And you still all get it done and are all successful at Cloudreach,
Hey,
right? So that's great.
Look,
It can't happen.
I've seen many years of successful people that spend a lot of time being focused in the gym, having a strong workout plan, and I feel like that type of energy only stimulates you more, gives you more energy to kind of attack the day. So I believe so much in having your day planned out in advance. So it's like running a race. You've got a program, you've got a coach, which I've got a great coach here at Cloudreach. And how do I go and execute? Right? We all have a quota, a number. So how do I work closely with my CSPs? How do I work closely with other partners out there and my customers to make sure that I'm getting whole? And so I look at it from the perspective of how do you meet your goals by backing into it and by having that plan. And what I love about the job is how much I get to learn from my customers, from the CSPs. And constantly understanding what that journey looks like, because it's always changing. There's always new technologies coming out from our partners, and so it pushes me to be on the edge and always learning, but also bringing that to our customers and knowing that we have so many great technologists at Cloudreach that the most important thing I see from those technologists to our customers is how they teach them to fish. So when we go into our customers, we have engagements with them. We're helping them to migrate apps. We're helping them to build out DevOps in their organization. It's not just us getting in there and hammering on the keyboard. It's us, helping them to see how we're doing it. It's teaching them to be able to scale for the future. And also, when you think about a DevOps perspective, what does that mean to the organization? What does that mean to the people and their roles? And so really being able to holistically see it, even outside of technology, but within the people of your customers and how they fit into new roles and how they advance their own careers. So it's really exciting being able to do this year over year and watching, the folks that you work with for your customers, and even folks in the CSPs being able to grow their career and grow with them. So it's just it's a very fast-paced, very exciting industry. And the sky's the limit. It's almost you set the bar high for yourself and you go achieve it, but there's no end to how much you can accomplish here. Especially when you have a good plan, you have great support from leadership that will dig in with you, be alongside of you, and then you've got so many awesome technologists to dig from and come alongside of you to support you. So it's a holistic year, and it backs into each day what you focus on executing. And I couldn't say enough great things about the organization and all of the wonderful partners we get to work with.
I think to Hunter's point, I think that I'm going to go back to what Chris mentioned a half an hour ago when he kicked off this session for everybody around the transformation of the shift in technology being no longer legacy-based. And I think if you fast forward that thought around the day in the life of a sales executive, I think that's really what I'm seeing most from a coaching position, working with my team members like Hunter. It's wonderful to see folks having their own career, their own knowledge changing and increasing and learning every day, because what's happening is that Hunter and other team members, we're not having conversations with customers about legacy infrastructure, changing, upgrading, the old way of doing things in the IT stack, but rather every conversation, every customer's business outcome is different. It's a different challenge. It is where are they on their journey to get out of their data center, to get out of and remove headcount, legacy technology pieces, and be moving to the public cloud in that journey. So from a career perspective, and from a growth perspective, as a seller at Cloudreach, you're going to have the opportunity to be hand in hand with your clients, your prospects, and being able to have those conversations, which really they haven't had ever in the past. And so you're the person who's representing Cloudreach, representing and supporting that customer on their potential and future journey to the cloud. And I think that's really is what makes this position and the career opportunity at Cloudreach so exciting, is that the fact that it's a new path, you're breaking new glass, it's great opportunities, and as Hunter mentions, it's exciting, it's fun, it's a collaborative environment, and it's a winning environment, which we all love.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I'm just doing a time check.
Yeah.
I think we have like 10 minutes left. I know I only have time for Q&A, so I don't know if we want to go to the next slide and then turn that over.
Sure, I do want to make one validation though. So Hunter's been unbelievably successful here. However, to be successful at Cloudreach, you don't necessarily have to be a triathlete or have 5 children, right? So it's unbelievable that you can do that. And I think what that proves is one of the things sort of underpinning your dialogue is organization, right? Is being focused, knowing whom to talk to, when to talk to them, from the engagement, whether it's a CSP or whether it's the enterprise customer, or collaboratively going together and having that dialogue. So you can do it all like Hunter, but you also, you've got tremendously successful folks that maybe don't run the triathlon. Maybe they do one of the 3 components of that from that perspective. So it is a great opportunity. I think we've got, from a global perspective, a varied sales force, that is really out representing, as Joe, you mentioned, Cloudreach day in and day out. We can go maybe to the next slide here. So from a successful cloud sales executive, I don't know if Joe, Candice, you want to jump in and provide a little insight?
I would love to. I'm sure Candice has some thoughts here too. I think from a experience perspective and a DNA perspective and what we're looking for and what's been proven as a recipe when we have folks like Hunter and others on the team today taking the field with our customers, they have cloud experience. They understand the motion of customers wanting to get more virtualized, go into a subscription type offer, becoming more flexible around agility, competition, business outcome, having those business outcome conversations with customers and not necessarily getting into the real technical pieces of it. The collaborative piece is all about teaming and teaming well. Competitive, we're looking for folks really who love to compete every day, to take to the street and win. It's a very competitive market out there, as we all can imagine, and that's a real big part of what we're looking for. And the folks here at Cloudreach today that are here, who are successful, they are very competitive. It's in their DNA. And they're also able to network. It's really key, both in your personal network, for example, LinkedIn, to be able to leverage that, as well as go back and work with the cloud providers. And as Candice mentioned, the first 30, 45 days, 2 months, what have you, it's really going to be key to have those folks being able to go out and leverage those relationships with the cloud providers, build some key relationships, because once you get that going, you're up and running, and that ties right back into being collaborative and having some cloud experience and being able to understand what that movement looks like. And I think lastly, to be entrepreneurial, to have that attitude that you're building your own business, as Hunter has done so well, that you have multiple accounts within different verticals, that you're not really waiting for people to hand you opportunities necessarily, but rather, at the end of the day, it's up to you to go find opportunities, network, leverage relationships, be competitive. And I think folks who have that entrepreneurial, this is my business, I own it, I'm going to take customers on their journeys with them. I think that's the recipe really for success here. And I would be happy to have Candice or Chris or
No,
Candice, any
I'm
thoughts?
good. I think you said everything. We could go to the Q&A, so make sure we have enough time to
Yeah,
answer any
perfect,
questions.
perfect, sure. So we're at the Q&A section here for today. The one thing I'll mention is maybe you're gathering your questions. Even though we're sitting in the United States today, we do have a global team, as we've referenced a couple times. And so everything really is transferable from that perspective, right? So the day in the life that Hunter kind of experiences is very consistent with what you would find if you woke up and were in London, or in our Paris office, or in our Munich office, or up in Amsterdam, among other places. So, from that perspective, we're very focused on consistency and how we show up with the customer, and making sure that, we're representing Cloudreach and our CSPs all day, every day in the most professional manner possible. And Joe, as you said, we're just very focused on how that, shows up on that customer site. So we'll see if we have any questions here. We're looking at the screen. You can, I think, type your questions in. I believe that may be the easiest way.
Or *6.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure from Zoom if you can actually ask a question. You may be muted, and *6 may actually take you off mute. I'm not quite sure. We're just thrilled we could get all the connectivity together to be actually able to broadcast this today. It's a lot of wires behind the scenes to get the connectivity working.
So the question that we have is around, and I apologize, part of it is cut off, but sessions in agnostic, how often is a sales motion agnostic regards to being influenced or determined by the CSP or partner who you're engaged with the customer? So that's a really great question.
Yeah, Candice, do you want to?
Yeah, so it just depends. I know if you're not, exactly what you're looking for, but if AWS brings us into account, or Google or Microsoft, we're aligned to that partner. They introduce us to the customer, so we will be working with them, related to that opportunity the whole way. Now, if through your own network or your own prospecting initiatives, you have a client that you engage with and you start talking to them, it truly is agnostic. And that's where, either through an assessment that we may do, or due to different conversations or having our strategists involved, it can go to any platform, and that's where we determine what's the best platform for that client based off what they're trying to accomplish. So, if it is where you're brought in by one of our partners, we're aligned to the partner, and we're going to win together, lose together. But if it's from yourself and your own efforts, then it really just depends as to what's the best platform for the client.
Yeah, Hunter, I would ask you, maybe in some of the engagements, when you're talking to customers, have they already made their mind up in many respects on which platform they'd like to use?
Many times, and I think the bottom line here is what's going to make the customer most successful. How do we align with the customer? How do we make sure that the technology is aligned in their environment? What's best for their applications? So yeah, most of the time I see customers going with an initial platform, really learning it, really understanding it well. And then if it makes sense, at a later date to kind of take on another potential CSP. But I've seen the most success coming from, if a customer is migrating apps, let's focus on one CSP, let's make sure that they get it right. With us, we handhold them and help them to scale. And at that point, if there's certain applications that would make better sense in another CSP, then we go that route.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is we do have some customers that actually have instances in the public cloud with all three. And that's very specific based on what they're looking to do. It may be a technology driver, it may be an integration or application issue within their own environment that may work better with one versus the other. So we do have some of those scenarios as well. We have another question?
We have 3 more, so good questions coming through. So the other questions around common resistance from accounts about embracing the public cloud, with our experience and why particular law firms. As someone who has a team in New York, I can definitely have had that experience with law firms, and it just varies as to why certain individuals or companies, I should say, don't move to the cloud. With law firms, a lot of time it's because they have the partners, and the partners, have a big say into what the strategy is, and there's a way they've always done business. And for those partners, like they bring in the big bucks for the firms, and they're not ready for that change or their sensitivity around the data. But it's one where it really comes back to just making sure you're constantly educating, and you have to challenge, you have to challenge the way the customer thinks. Because if they have a perspective on something, or if they think if they heard this from something else, that this is the way it works, and you have experience elsewhere, you have to tell them that story. And it can create tension, but I personally feel sometimes those are when relationships and credibility is built, because you are challenging them. You're not just sitting across the table saying yes, yes, but you're having a true conversation around how you're going to change the way that they are doing their, their day-to-day operations, the way they are supporting the business. And, you just have to be comfortable with, those type of moments.
I see a question up here, it looks like about hybrid cloud. And helping customers adopt a hybrid cloud approach.
What's our approach in helping customers adopt hybrid cloud?
Sure. I don't know, Hunter, if you probably have some conversations with customers about, and hybrid cloud can be defined a couple different ways, right? It could be hybrid cloud between multiple cloud providers. It could be an on-prem solution connecting to the public cloud. So I don't know, Hunter, if you had some of those dialogue.
Yeah, most definitely. And there's customers out there that we come across all the time that have applications that need to continue to reside in the data center, right? So with that situation, we kind of go to our partner network, and we bring in other folks that can help them with that, on-premise environment, but also the apps that, can move to the cloud, x86 workloads. The beauty here again is with our managed services. So if they're going to a hybrid approach for multiple clouds, our managed services can scale across multiple CSPs. So I think that's a real key factor in how we support customers long term as they start using more CSPs, or they have on-prem workloads. We make sure that we customize our approach to each individual customer to make sure it fits their environment and their long-term needs.
Yeah.
Got it. Great.
The question before about us mentioning a wide audience that you often are working with, do you see many similarities or trends with the cloud native customer profile versus big enterprise with decades of baggage? Or is it typically a unique set of challenges? I guess my experience here, I think where we see a lot of similarities will be mainly within industries, and then within that industries, is it someone who is legacy, they've been there for 100, 200 years, and believe it or not, there are companies that we do work with that are 200 years old. Are they someone who was born within the last 10 years? And so that's where, you kind of look at what's happening in that industry and where are they within that industry? Are they a lagger within it, or are they, driving innovation? Are they the early adopter? And then from there, it just depends as to what their challenges would look like. Because, regulations is probably something we talk about with so many of our clients, especially if you're in healthcare, legal, or the finance space. And you really want to understand that, and what does that mean? What are the new certifications that are coming up?
You want to understand the security impact. And so there's things that just will vary. And that's kind of how I, coach my team in breaking it down is, okay, what's happening within the industry and then where are they within that industry?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think, as we take a look at the digitally native or those that were sort of, as we were born in the cloud, some of their characteristics may be a little bit more fast moving, a little bit more, as we talked about, right, skills within the seller, entrepreneurial, right, and willing maybe to take some chances from a cutting edge perspective that some of the larger legacy organizations may not necessarily be willing to take, or want to take sort of very methodical steps, right, as they sort of evolve to the public cloud, whereas some of the startups are basically jumping in with both feet and trial and error along the way, because they've got to make a presence very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Do we have another question,
Yeah, our
please?
last question, so it says, thanks for the webinar, so you're welcome. Who is your typical customer? And just give us a walkthrough on typical strategy and business models that you may employ. So typical client, I think it does varies by market. Like in New York, we have a lot of finance as well as media and retail, just because that's our market there. So I'm sure for Joe in the Southeast and for Hunter in North Carolina, maybe more textile type of companies. So I think it just varies about what market you're in as to who we would see and work with. And then to walk through a typical strategy and business model. So we didn't have this slide here, but we do have a model where depending where a client is on their journey to the cloud, there's different ways that we would help them. And from there, it could be, like we said earlier, just talking about assessments, and not necessarily assessments, but it could be around, like we have cloud consultants who are building out the company as to like the way they should now move their operations as moving to the cloud. Because what happens, the organization, someone's role is not going to be the same anymore. It's shifting. They're having to learn something new, or just the way they overall manage their operations. So we have individuals who, depending where we're helping the client, depending where the customer is, we would help to define that for them. And then, it just really depends where the client is within that journey. If it's early on, we're probably doing a lot more helping them with the governance aspect of it, helping them with the security piece, helping them with truly building out the strategy. If they're further along, it's here's innovation. Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about data analytics, as Hunter was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, to add to that, I think you're spot on there, but where I find we can engage best with our customers is when there's a compelling event.
Yep.
So when we find that specific compelling event, for example, a customer is divesting, right? So there's a merger and acquisition happening, and that individual customer has to exit the data center.
Right.
So with one of my larger enterprise customers, we've helped them to transform over the past 5 years from that compelling event all the way through to building out a data and analytics platform. So I really think it comes down to what are the long-term business cases, but also what is compelling that customer to move, and then how can we help them to transform in the midst of that situation, and not just make another for a better word, lift and shift, but to transform within that move. Mm-hmm. So to take the key business-facing applications and actually transform those apps while they're moving.
Right.
I see that to be the most impacting scenario.
Yeah, and it's interesting, those trigger events can be internal, right? There could be cost pressures internally. It could also be competitive and market-driven externally, right? So again, the great thing about sort of sitting here within this ecosystem at Cloudreach is you get to have all those different conversations, sometimes the same day, right? You may get a customer in the morning where you're talking about internal pressures they're facing, and then out with a customer in the afternoon that's got market pressures that they're trying to overcome. Could be from a startup that they're facing. So just, again, a lot of dialogue. And we talk about developing as a salesperson, just in general, you really have that path here because you're engaged in so many conversations across so many different industries that it gives you sort of that broad perspective from a business scenario and case.
And I think, Chris, in summary to that question, I think all the comments have been spot on, and maybe I could just put a bow on it. I think in summary on it, which this question, by the way, is a great question, but I don't think there is a typical customer, and I think that's part of the excitement and and the draw to come to Cloudreach from a seller perspective. Is there isn't a typical customer, because every conversation is different, every customer is different. And as I mentioned earlier, perhaps a half an hour ago, a seller at Cloudreach is really skilled in is learning to understand business outcomes, customers' goals, objectives. And once you understand that, then you're going to understand really what is the best thing for that particular customer based on what they may want to do. It may be competitive, it may be more compliance driven. It could be a various things that's driving that customer. But from a seller perspective, an excitement from a career growth perspective, why you want to represent Cloudreach in the market is you're going to have the opportunity to work with all three providers across all the verticals, large, small clients, but all different types of needs and challenges, which I think makes the opportunity fun, exciting, and one that you can grow into as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Do we have another question?
Yeah, there's
Candice?
one more, and then I know we're over time, so maybe this is the last question. So if you have any other ones, we'll just follow as a follow-up.
Sure, that's
2
great.
minutes over. So this is the question. It's a good question. How do you manage accounts who've had a bad experience with the CSP, and who wants to bring some apps out of that CSP, either bring it back on-prem or to another CSP? We have an instance of this happening right now with my team, and it's with a new client. So we weren't the individuals, who did the initial migration, and just the approach we've taken is one, can we make sure that the current environment's okay? Was maybe the migration wrong, or did something happen? And it's, based off the customer, if they really feel strongly like, hey, I want to move. If it wasn't something we initially did, we have helped them move to another CSP. Now, if it's our work that we've done, it's a conversation where we want to make sure, okay, what's causing this, and try to work with the current CSP that we did business with, because, like I said earlier, we win together, we lose together. So I think it just varies as to, the client, as to were we the initial partner who helped them, or are we coming in new to help them do this move, or is it where we've done work before? And it's something that we would, take very seriously if we had done work before, to have a conversation as to, how can we just make sure what we currently did will work for the customer.
No, I think it's a good point, Candice. It looks like we've got no open questions left there. So in closing, first and foremost, Joe, Candice, Hunter, thank you for the dialogue today. And most importantly, thank you all for joining us out there today on this webinar. We hope this has given you a perspective of not only Cloudreach, which we're sort of very passionate about, and we could probably spend a couple more hours in here talking about what we love to do from a seller's perspective, but also just sort of the growth in the opportunity here at the marketplace, the conversations that you can have, the development that you all can have as a seller, as you sort of go out and are in the market, having these conversations with different types of customers, small, large, mostly in the enterprise space, different verticals, could be public sector opportunities as well. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about that today, but there's a lot of work we do in the public sector space that all the public cloud providers participate in as well. So there's a wealth of opportunity. The market is growing exponentially. We here at Cloudreach think, given our heritage and how we were developed and how we evolved as an organization of being born in the cloud, that has sort of a certain culture that we cultivate here that's very important for us. So with that, I'd like to sign off. I'd like to thank everyone here in the room today. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and we'll look forward to hopefully talking to you all individually as we progress through this journey. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.